All right, hello, I'm meteorologist Rob Carmark here with a weather update that is live on our streaming app as well as on our mobile app. So this is something you could always tune into from time to time during periods of active weather, which is what we have right now. Now, you'll notice right off the top, we're going to be talking about something called a weather impact alert. Now, if you're not familiar with what we've been doing here for a while, is that for the days that really rise to a different level where the weather really impacts you, what you're doing, what you can or can't do, or how you might have to alter your schedule, just really things to be aware of, we will issue these alerts so we can really get ahead of these systems so that you know this is not just some run-of-the-mill storm. There's something extra to it. Maybe it's the totals or the timing, or there's events going on that will be impacted by the weather, and many people all at the same time. That's when we issue these, and that's what we have right now. But it's not for everybody. It is specifically for the Sierra. Why? We're going to have some heavy Sierra snow that's starting to move in right now. It's going to last through the rest of today and part of this evening, and it's only today, so that's a good thing. However, this is a Friday, and for a lot of folks, Friday is the travel day if you're going to be spending time in the Sierra, getting to the destinations in Truckee or South Lake Tahoe or Kirkwood or what have you. You're going to be looking at a lot more cars on the road heading to the Sierra, and when the travel is very bad, which it will be for the rest of today because it's going to be snowing hard, low visibility, snow-packed roads, chain controls. Guess what? I'm going to keep going because we're also going to have likely spinouts and usually some issue with the truck at some point. And sometimes the delays and the amount of activity where tow trucks, CHP, and Caltrans crews need to get in and clean up the situation, they may have momentary closures for safety or even visibility at times, and that means it's a hard stop. Then you're stuck on the road for who knows how long till they can get things moving along. Now, the amounts are impressive. Just yesterday, we were talking about 3 to 6 inches of snow, and that is a decent amount. That's a snowstorm that will be impactful, but when you get to this amount of snow over about a day, that really does pile up. The plows have to keep moving along, and it's just a longer lasting chain control issue. Also, the snow level is going to be lower than it has recently. We're down to 6,000 feet at times and even 5,000 feet at times. So for one location that's well known, Blue Canyon, as they're starting to move up, it's a big chain control area where they have lots of space for people to pull over for trucks and for passenger vehicles to put on chains. That's right around 5,000 feet. That's where we're going to be looking at the snow level through the course of the day today. Now, we still have active weather in the valley. We're going to have wet roads, very wet right now. It's raining hard all throughout the valley, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's more or less something that people can handle. It's just really driving that usually causes the most issues with this kind of rain that we're going to be looking at. I just want to point out something that I think is important. You know, our job here at ABC 10 is not just to sit here and read a bunch of numbers. It's to put things into context. And going into this wet season, we were heading into a weak to moderate La Nina pattern. What does that mean? Over the years, you tend to, but not every year, see this pattern. Drier in Southern California, and then when you start to get to about far Northern California and off to the north, wetter than normal. This is helpful, but it doesn't dictate. In other words, hey, it's a weak La Nina, this will happen. It's statistically, this is something that we start to look for. Now, our prime months for our rainy season are October through about March. Of course, it could rain or snow before that, it's happened, or even after that. But really, most of our rain and snow is fit in within about 6 months. We're a little more than halfway through. And we're starting to see not only rain in the bucket that is impressive for far Northern California and above average, we're also seeing the other side of this with well below average for rain in the bucket and just really warm conditions for Southern California. In fact, going into next week, they're going to have a major Santa Ana offshore fire weather situation. So it's panning out with what we've seen in years past. It also reflects for the snowpack, which frankly is a good thing. Our big reservoirs, Trinity, which is right over here, which doesn't always rely on snowpack, but still, it picks up on the same patterns that you see in some of these years. We've got Shasta, which is right over here, and then Oroville, which is right over in here. Very impressive, well above average. We're more than halfway for a full snowpack by the time we get to spring, which is good. And then the numbers start to go down, as you would expect. It's not the sheer amount. We're not talking about grand totals. It's percentages that really dictate if we're either above or below or kind of how our situation is. Statewide, when you look at all three zones, we like where we're at, but of course, storms like the one that we have today are going to help it. One more thing about La Nina winters, you can see a big variety even with what we typically expect. For example, 2016, 2017, that was coming out of a long-range drought. It busted it. It was way above average. The very following year, which, by the way, was also considered a weak La Nina year, was well below average. So you can still see a lot of variation even within the bucket of what we consider a La Nina pattern. Okay, let's get to the matter at hand. We've got vigorous rain that's happening, as well as snow that's really starting to pick up, because this is the apex of the storm. This is where the moisture is meeting the mechanism of low pressure. There's a whole bunch of lift happening all at the same time. It is enhanced once you get to the lower foothills here, because it's not only the lift of how a storm works, but also orographic lift. What does that mean? It's hitting an elevation, a hard elevation change, and a lift that's going to enhance some of the rainfall rates, some of the snowfall rates as well, and then all the other things that you would expect with it. Higher elevations will experience a lot of wind, which lowers the visibility, and we're going to be watching this storm very focused over the next several hours. Now, we've seen storms that are much more strong and more powerful than this, but when you're in the middle of it, for example, if you've got a drive that you've got to do at some point today, do you want to do it right now? I wouldn't. I would delay it, because you don't have to wait very long. On the back side of this, literally within an hour or two, the rain rates are going to slow down, if not stop, and we're in a much different situation. So if you're ahead of this, if you're in South Lake Tahoe, Kirkwood, some of these other passes are closed, but below that, Arnold, Murphy, Sonora, you're still waiting for the more organized, steady, heavier rain/snow to move into your area as well. But it's already happening right around 80. And then, of course, off to the north, it's all based on elevation, where that snow is right around 6,000 feet through the rest of today. And then we're going to be watching it drop overnight, but we're running out of moisture at that point. This is mostly focused on Northern California. The central part of the state is still fairly quiet at the moment, but of course, this has somewhere to go. It's going to go right there within the next couple of hours. I threw in this red line because I think this is really important. With sometimes these systems, the way that they come together, there's a sharp line how it comes in, and then also how it exits the area. And you can see just off the coast, the clouds even decreased by quite a bit, and there's even some pockets of sunshine that are possible later on today. So there is a hard stop to the more steady, organized rain. But I want to caution you, in this back end of the storm, there are still a potential for something new to pop up. We call them convective showers. That's when you see the big white puffy clouds start to grow. If they have the ability to keep growing, sometimes there's enough moisture there where then you get new showers up to the possibility of thunderstorms. So there still is a back end of this storm. It doesn't look like this, but it certainly could produce more rain before the sun goes down, and even closer to the middle of the evening. We're talking about 8, 9, 10 p.m. That's also still possible. But we're right in the middle of this, so be cautious very much in the valley spots for ponding, clogged drains, and driving. In the Sierra, officially, from the Weather Service, a winter storm warning that goes from now all the way till 10 o'clock at night. On the back side of this, it's called a winter weather advisory, just because the totals and the impacts are less. Still looking at snow back here, but not as much as when we're really looking at that combination of the strong storm, orographic lift, and some of the colder temperatures right at the top of the passes. Okay, let's look at the back end of this storm. Is there anything else that's going to come in? Often this time of year, if you open up the storm window, if something else is out there, then you're going to get a series of storms. That is not the case. Once this is done, I'm calling it a one and done storm, because then a big story is going to emerge, which is how dry and how warm we get going into the weekend and all of next week. We've got a mixture of 40s and 50s. You can see why it's just taking a little bit longer for some of this cold air to filter in. Still, technically, any moisture coming in for Truckee, South Lake Tahoe is going to be rain at the moment, but we're just waiting for all that cold air on the back end of that storm to come in. Then those snow levels will drop pretty quickly. For the valley locations, very front-loaded for the day, rain until about noon or so, then dropping off pretty quickly. That sunshine, if we get a lot of it, that's when it could fire up a few showers before the sun actually goes down. But this time of year, that's tough for that to happen, but not impossible. Moving this along, we've got a couple more things to talk about. One more band right around 9 to 10 o'clock at night. It's mostly clouds, but it might sprinkle for a little bit, just in case it's a Friday night. You might be out doing something. And then early in the morning, those gray skies indicate fog forming at the ground level. So we could be looking at a fog situation very early in the morning on Saturday. And the reason why is pretty simple. Anytime we're in a post-storm environment, we've got saturated ground, so the ground is wet and ready to go. So any moisture close to the surface very quickly, as long as it's clear overnight, gets cold and there's very little wind, can then all of a sudden form a cloud. And that's what we look for the widespread fog situation. Then it rises up a little bit, then it's overcast. I think that's very possible early tomorrow morning, so you could be looking at dense fog in that environment. specifically getting back to what I talked about right off the top, a weather impact alert. So again, the weather in the Sierra specifically will be all day today more impactful. Why? We've got heavy snow, low visibility, all the driving issues that I mentioned, like possible closures, absolutely chain controls at some point later on today. And that's going to be the case for the rest of today. Now, this precipitation forecast has a scale. Remember, at elevation, you're not converting this. This is not rain in the bucket per se. You're going to be converting this over to snow. And it's still impressive. 8 to 12 inches of snow above 6,000 feet is a possibility as long as everything lines up and it doesn't move along too quickly or too much warm air gets drawn in. And for the valley floor, I'd say a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch is a good bet. That's what we've seen so far, by the way, with the current totals I looked at. North of Sacramento, lots of places in that range, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of rain. So most of what we see is low-level impacts. Early Friday travel in the valley, that will be impacted by wet roads. Anything going on in the middle of the day, Sacramento, for example, people waiting outdoors, that's going to be affected. The snow alert, the weather impact alert is only for the Sierra snow, and then the weekend is mostly going to be dry. One final note before we move into the 10-day forecast. Two big things are happening right now. The country is going to be very split for weather once we get into next week and likely the week after. A big cold snap for the middle of the country out toward the East Coast. For us, we start to warm up. And then we're also going to be remaining likely drier. Now, this is not for next week, although the conditions are the same, warmer and drier. This is going out 2 weeks from where we are right now. So basically out into the middle of January. That's the way things are trending at the moment. So this truly is a one and done storm. Enjoy the rain and snow if that's your thing. Watch out for travel because by the time we get to the weekend, we're looking at sunny skies and a very gradual warming trend as we get into the low 60s and beyond. And we're looking at another dry weekend next weekend.